दिल्ली वालों क्या हाल है आज? I know what my top priorities are. Of course, now, my daughter being at the top of the mountain, I wanted to nurture in children a love for nature.
Thank you. Looking forward, Alia, to hear from you and from you, Sushant.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Alia.
Thank you.
I think Aparna set it up really, really well. So, you're obviously an incredibly successful and powerful. Hey, folks, if you really want to listen, she's gonna have some amazing tips for entrepreneurs everywhere. You're one of the
Too
most
much
popular-
pressure, too much
I
pressure.
know, yeah, but don't worry. Your track record speaks for itself. So, first question, where did the interest in entrepreneurship come from?
So actually, I'll start off by saying hello to my lovely, lovely members of the media from Delhi. दिल्ली वालों, क्या हाल है आज? हाँ, बहुत सीरियस बातें हो रही है आज अभी इधर, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात हो रही है. और एक्चुअली आई वांट टू स्टार्ट ऑफ बाय सेइंग आई एम श्योर, आई थिंक 60% ऑफ द पीपल इन द रूम आर कंफ्यूज्ड एज टू व्हाई आई एम हियर एज एन एंटरप्रेन्योर. सोच रहे होंगे कि आलिया तो ब्रांड एंडोर्स करती है, एंटरप्रेन्योर कहाँ से आया है? मैक्सिमम इन्वेस्ट किया होगा. क्वेश्चन मार्क तो है ना? देखा, आई एम सो कनेक्टेड टू देम, सो आई नो एग्जैक्टली हाउ दे आर थिंकिंग. बट टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट, even I sometimes think to myself कि okay, you're actually an entrepreneur. So let's go back as to where this started and where this came from.
Yes.
In 2015 or 2016, I remember कि मेरे दिमाग में ना एक कीड़ा बैठ गया कि मुझे कुछ क्रिएट करना है. Okay, it's as simple. It was the rise of all these apps, and I'm speaking in the most simple language क्योंकि I'm an audience, I'm a consumer. So there's lots of apps coming out. So every time I was coming up with an idea, I also want to create an app. Little did I know that you need a lot of money, a clear idea, and somebody to back that idea. So then I remember, okay, fine. I would call up my team and say, oh no, I have this idea. Why don't we create something like this? Why don't we do this? Something. And they would just humor me and hear me out. And I don't think I'm ever going to stop ideating about, what I would like to create. But basically what I was looking for at that time, I remember, and it comes from a very vulnerable place as a person, I never wanted to put all my eggs in one basket, which is मैं एक actor हूँ and I work very hard on a daily basis, पर कल का क्या पता? Who knows where I'm going to be tomorrow. So I wanted to secure myself as a person and as a professional. But obviously, when I sat down to actually ideating about what I want to create, usually you would consider an actor to do like a fashion brand, some clothes, a limited edition collection of something, which is fine in its place and it's great. But when I actually got down to thinking about, do you need another fashion label? There's so much quantity, there's so many options available. So why would anybody come for a product just because my name is associated to it? So I didn't want it to be something that just because it's associated to my name, it's a brand that should stand tall on its own. So I looked for the gap in the market at that time. Us time pe, there were not as many homegrown, sustainable children's clothing brands at that time. And that's where I said, okay, this is the story. And parallelly, us time pe, I was also thinking of putting out a story of a little girl and her dog, Ed. And this little girl and her dog go on these adventures. They talk to trees and animals and everything, and they're on this adventure to save the planet. So from that story came the story of Edamama, which is my own children's wear clothing brand. मेरा venture है, मेरा capital है, मेरा vision है. I am the sole investor and founder of Edamama. So that's the information that I want to put out there first.
Fabulous. I did not know the story of Ed, by the way. So, would it be fair to say, Alia, that we were talking about it earlier, that you start with an idea, and then you keep peeling the layers, and you realize that you want to make some changes, and what you ultimately end up launching or bringing to life can sometimes be a little different. At least it was in my case. We started it's funny you mentioned there are enough clothing brands because we're trying to sell T-shirts way back then. One more clothing brand. But But what we started with on paper and what we ultimately launched were actually, I want to say, radically different, but they were fairly different. So did Edamama also go through a phase of you started with a version of it and then you kept iterating, and what we see today is actually different from where you started?
So the idea was always to create a sustainable children's clothing brand, right? So in terms of its sourcing, in terms of its material, in terms of the method used from the stage of manufacturing, everything. But I launched, I mean, it's like, break a leg situation. We launched right in the heart of the pandemic in 2020. So that was the first thing that I had to change my path. Ajay sir was talking about how you need to move with the time, being able to hybrid the moment and learn from what's coming at you as opposed to what you need to give back. I launched a spring-summer collection in autumn-winter because I was sitting on inventory for 6 months, but there was no option but to go ahead with it because that would be a major loss. Luckily, we decided to launch online. Talking about technology, if it was not for that, I didn't know at that time when we were going to go to a store. We didn't know how long it was going to be that I would be able to give people a live experience of touching and feeling the clothes. So that was the first challenge that was thrown at me. Of course, initially Edamama started off just children, but then there was a time, I remember back in 2022, I was expecting a child, and I looked at my wardrobe and there were no clothes for me that I wanted to wear, and I was very nervous about how my style was going to evolve over the next couple of months. So then I started making little changes to my wardrobe, and then comes the maternity collection of Edamama. I didn't expect that as well. That was not something that I planned. And then subsequently came infants and all of that. So now we have 0 to 14. And my plan now to go forward with Edamama is to include personal care, sustainable diapers, sustainable toys, and of course the storytelling being the center of it. That's also going to start soon, because I know that today as a mom, one of the my most precious things is when I read a book to my daughter, or I sing a song to her. So eventually, my dream maybe in the beginning was not to create an Edamama universe, but that's my plan, is to create an Edamama universe where you feel very connected to nature, very connected to your planet, and you just celebrate the child within you.
It actually does feel like you laid out what the 10-year vision for Edamama is right now.
Oh, did I do that?
You
That's
just did.
another thing I should mention. I know nothing about business.
I disagree. Have any of you folks, I found it particularly refreshing to hear Alia talk about, I was sitting on inventory. I need to do something about it. Inventory being one challenge. But I'm sure there would have been, your fair set of challenges. Obviously, having to launch it in the pandemic being one, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the things that I didn't mention is because we are a truly homegrown Indian brand, vocal for local, all our material is sourced and manufactured within India. That actually helped us in the middle of the pandemic, that we were not scrambling and running from pillar to post to make and keep the collection going. So for 2 years, we were able to keep our head above water because of that.
Wow. How would you, when you look back now on your journey over the last couple of years on Edamama, how would you turn the challenges that you would have, I'm sure you have surmounted, into what would you offer as advice from those learning experiences for entrepreneurs?
Number one, I don't have all the answers. That's the most important thing. I am very grateful that I was in a position, number one, that I could self-invest, that I could also appoint a team of ninjas, I call them, a cute, small, sweet team, because we were a bootstrap company, but the team really led me through all these challenging times and all the question marks. I know story, I know marketing, I know I like this visual, I don't like that visual. I know, okay, I initially did not want to do denims because I said, it's not really favorable to the planet and environment. So we had to then look at the way the one collection did. We were getting feedback, can you do denims, can you do jeans? So we had to look for another alternative. So we did green denims where, when you wash them, they do not leave an excess residue, etc., etc. So this is all feedback, listening to the consumer and listening to the team. So one of my utmost, my first and foremost advice to any entrepreneur or anyone on the verge of creation or the top of creation is listen to everyone. सुनो सबकी करो अपनी, पर सुनो. अगर सुनोगे नहीं तो समझ में नहीं आएगा कि हो क्या रहा है. To be a good leader, you have to actually rely a lot on your team, because leading, in my opinion, happens with the team being your backbone.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, earlier you mentioned, and you mentioned it a couple of times. You talked about sustainability, and it's something that at Amazon we feel very strongly about sustainability. It's actually one of our leadership principles, in fact. And all the brands, you know, Edamame and the brands that you've invested in, like Fool, there is an element of sustainability that seeps across all of them. What is it about sustainability that you feel so strongly about? And is that one of the X factors, if I may, that you look for when you think of ideas worth pursuing or investing?
It comes from very simple upbringing and understanding of dharti maa hoti hai. And we have to be very, very sensitive towards the planet that we're living in. And of course, there will be a couple of things here and there that you don't, maybe you miss a step here or you miss a step there. But if you're consciously just thinking about it, is it good for the planet? Is it good for the planet? You'll automatically make small decisions, and you can't be all rounding all the time. Otherwise, of course, you can sit and you can point 100 things as to what's wrong with what you're doing. But even if you're doing just 5 things right, and I'm talking about even as a person, an individual in your day-to-day life, it goes a very long way. So the sustainability from the fact that also I wanted to nurture in children a love for nature, build a generation of young planeteers. So even with the words that we have on our t-shirts and all, it's not like stay cool, stay calm. It's, be kind, get dirty, like in the mud. It's all about being very close to earth. And of course, you have to put practical practices in place as well. I feel sustainable as a word, the word sustainability, we overuse it sometimes. So you have to really, in terms of certification, we tick all the boxes in terms of being a completely certified sustainable brand, from our, like I said, from our buttons not being plastic, from our fabrics, we use excess fabric and we create, all the trims, we create potlies out of it. Every garment comes with a seed, so you can plant that seed and have a plant along with some clothes. So it's the small, little things that you kind of seep into the brand ideology, but that comes from me as a person. Since you mentioned Pool, of course, I love the story of Pool, but not only because of the fact that they are clearing waste and reducing waste, but also they're doing that whilst giving various jobs to women locally. So I love how each story ties into the other. For me, it's not about the money, as I know people say that a lot, but genuinely, that is not what attracts me to any brand to invest in or to support or to create in this aspect. It is the story. I'm a storyteller first, and it's always the story.
Amazing how you have been able to link, one vocation of, bringing stories to life to even your entrepreneurial approach. What, according to you, Alia, does it take to create a successful startup? Successful startup, right? For the creation of taking an idea and creating it, and I think Professor Sood was talking about that earlier, we have a lot of them where the start happens, right? And if I may, I think by any yardstick, Edamame has actually crossed that and well and beyond. So what does it take to go from just starting to scaling?
Well, I think, again, that's a lot of pressure for me to just suddenly give that extreme advice. But see, from my experience, number one for me, it was finding the gap in the market. If there's a gap in your life, there will be a gap in the other people's lives as well. Sitting here, just under a board of technology and innovation, I really can't be sitting on a high horse, because technologically and innovation-wise, I've really not done that. So I'm sure they know what they're doing. But one of the things that I think is fabulous about a show like Mission Startup, and with Ajay sir's contribution and support, what you're saying about having mentors lead the way, really being able to, of course, number one, believe in your dream. Do not be afraid of failing. But that's very easy to say when you're not putting in your own money. So when there is money on the table, you're very afraid of failing. But sometimes it takes time. So you have to see it through. But that's where that mentor is so important. That's where that support system really comes into play, because very often I'm continuously second guessing myself, because I tell myself, I know nothing about business, I know nothing about numbers. You're throwing these terminologies at me and they make no sense to me. And I'm telling them, explain it to me in an elevator pitch. In 4 lines, if it makes sense to you, then it'll make sense to me. Like if you ask me what your next film, Rocky or Rani Ki Prem Kahani, is about, and I can't tell you, and it takes me about 65 minutes to explain it to you, you'll be like, I'd rather go watch the film. But if I tell you, no, it's a film about 2 families and 2 cultures, and not just loving each other, but also loving each other's families. Simple, cool. I know if I want to buy a ticket to that movie or not. Same thing comes to a brand like Edamama or any other brand or any other innovation. If I can tell you in 1 second what it does and what it will do, or in a couple of sentences, you're sold eventually. We don't have time. We need to know it immediately. So you have to have that confidence in that, and someone giving you that confidence, saying that you've got something, just keep going and it'll come, and helping you from all those little speed bumps, and sometimes massive ones. I forgot the question. I've just gone digress.
That's totally
but,
fine. I think the audience is adequately enthralled.
You've
At least
understood.
I can. I want to ask a question. So, do you count a large group of mentors who have helped you along this journey of scaling Edamama? How did you find them? Mentors, advisors, like where should budding entrepreneurs be looking for? Obviously, Mission Startup is obviously a great platform, but how did you find them?
Like-minded people who have started business, like done something in that space before, maybe not succeeded at it for XYZ reason. Like again, speaking about someone, my business head, Ifat, not talking too much about her journey, but we found her because she had a little brand that she had done on her own, selling exclusively on a platform. And we really liked the fact that she went out there and did it on her own, and felt that she would have a lot to add to a brand like Edamama, and she's somebody that I deeply rely on her. I trust her blindly, and sometimes I say, if you feel like it's what we should do, I don't think about it, but if you feel like what we should do, we will do it. So just looking actually not where people have succeeded, sometimes looking where people have failed, but there was something there, and sometimes I always feel, and somebody said this recently to me, it actually was said by a cricketer, if I'm not mistaken. You should walk into a room and actually look for the person who's 7 on 10 and not 10 on 10. Because the 7 on 10 has that extra 3 that they really need to give.
Interesting. Very interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, sorry, I was suddenly reminded of what my grades in school were, and they weren't as good as 7 on 10. That's for sure. Talking about Mission Startup, with your experience of having been an entrepreneur and having been an investor too, and obviously having been a phenomenal, entertaining actor, what do you expect Mission Startup to be about? Because it needs to bring in a combination of being entertaining for viewers, inspirational, and also ultimately provide a behind-the-scenes look into the world of startups.
You're talking about going and supporting innovation at the grassroots level. I'm expected to be wowed, surprised, edge of my seat, really being so proud of where our country is at today. And I'm expecting to see a lot of honesty and a lot of vulnerability. And I would like to see that, because it's not easy. And at the end of the day, this is a competition. Mission Startup is a competition. I'm guessing one person eventually at the end of the season or end of whatever. But I know that there are 10 teams, right? What I know is one will win, but the other 9 are not going to go unnoticed.
Absolutely.
So there is so much exposure and such a beautiful platform for these people. And like everyone rightfully said, inspiring, incentivizing. You'll have people sitting at home watching the show and maybe resonating, saying, yes, this is me, this is what I thought, this is what I felt, oh, that's the mistake that I made. And even if they don't land up coming on Mission Startup, they will go into their own mission and maybe start something there.
Wow, that's interesting. That's really interesting. Last question. So you are a producer, an actor, I'm sure a very busy personal life, a mom, an entrepreneur, an investor, and I'm sure I missed out a bunch of them. How do you manage it all? What's your secret to work-life balance?
I think everyone over here, everyone has a balance that they need to maintain, right? You have to maintain your family, you have to maintain your work life, you have to maintain your children, घर संभालना है, खुद को संभालना है, health संभालना है, सब कुछ संभालना है. But we do it because such is life, and you need to just keep moving. You know, put one step in front of the other, not think about what you're not doing right, think about how you've gotten through the day with a smile on your face, and even if you have a couple of tears rolling down, it's okay because such is life. So one of the most important things is I don't have all the answers. Sometimes I do not manage, but I know what my top priorities are. Of course, now, you know, my daughter being at the top of the mountain, but you just have to, like, I'm sounding like some motivational speaker right now, but I'm just saying you just have to keep going and not thinking about how you're doing or how well you're doing or how badly you're doing, and, you know, stop yourself every now and then to give yourself a pat on your back if you want, but just keep going. Such is life.
Just keep going, such is life. I think that's a t-shirt slogan, I don't know. I'll try it. But thank you so much.
Thank
you
you.
so much for being here. Thank you for your candor. And thank you for what I'm certain is going to be some little very interesting pearls of wisdom for entrepreneurs everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank
Can
you.
we have a round of applause, please, for Alia?